Hello and welcome to Analysts Gone Wild. It's March 6th. I'm Robert Kramer. It's 2025. Can you believe that, Sam? And we got a great group of analysts here to talk about some amazing events and things that are going on in the enterprise world. And let's bring everybody into the loop here and kind of introduce ourselves and go through the topics that we have at hand today. So why don't we start bottom up? Shashi, why don't you introduce yourself real quick, and we'll kind of go to Ken and John and Sam and start the ball rolling.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shashi Bellamkonda. I'm the Principal Research Director of Infotech. Been in the analyst space for 2 years, but 20 years in technology marketing. Over to you.
Great. Ken, you want to go next, please?
Sure thing. Hi, Ken Gonzalez here, otherwise known as kengon. Pretty simple group covering CIO topics and infrastructure and operations. Great to be here.
Great. John?
John Reed, co-founder of Diginomica, looking at real-world issues of transformation, how it really works, and heavy dose of AI hype deconstruction. I'm in a little bit of I don't know about gone wild, but I'm feeling a little grouchy reviewing these latest headlines, so let's see where that goes.
You got to be
supposed to be read that way, John.
Yeah.
Analysts gone grumpy or grouchy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm worried about that one. Let's see how it goes. Maybe you guys can get me excited about these incredible news items.
You got to warn us if it's grumpy or not grumpy before we start, but so we're prepared.
Okay, cool.
Sam?
Hey guys, so Sam Gupta here, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the analyst and advisory firm, roughly 20 years in the space, covering enterprise software. Robert, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I moved on. I'm Robert Kramer with Moor Insights and Strategy, and I've been in the analyst world less than a few years, and I've come from the ERP and data space and an ex-CMO. So I think I've been on both sides of the coin with the customer and the vendors, and now as the analyst. One thing I wanted to mention, analysts bring a lot to the table, and I think that when marketing teams look at what an analyst does, I think they bring this non-biased, trusted source that they can rely on to help them with bringing the messages to the customer, because the customer likes to buy on functionality and business impact, not features necessarily, because you can't, even though industries are different, even though customers are different, there's no one size fits all. So everybody needs to be, they're handheld in order to decide what technologies are best for them to implement. So that's a little bit about me, but let's jump into the first one and see if we're all in a good mood. Right, John?
Here we go.
Well, you were talking a little bit about your data storage a little bit before we got on the call here, and Lenovo's buying Infinidot. I'm not sure if I said it right, or DAT.
Infinidot, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, but there's something, and John, maybe you can bring this to your opinion, but they're bringing something unique to Lenovo, because I looked at what's their competitive advantage, and it's their architecture, it's their ability to scale, it's their ability to have large data sets. The cost is a big deal. They have some cybersecurity features, but we're seeing this as a trend. I think that's one of the big things. Why is this happening, and why does Lenovo need to buy this company? So what do you guys think?
Well, I'm just going to say that when I read that Infinidot provides high-performance, mission-critical enterprise storage solutions for scalable, cyber-resilient data management, I said, I'm going to buy that.
Marketing.
As soon as I get off the call, that is, I'm going to win buzzword bingo in the process. But just real quick, because I like to hear what these other guys have to say about this. I think one of the things that really jumped out at me was actually the word hybrid, and this notion that so many enterprises are dealing with hybrid environments right now, hybrid cloud, hybrid data situations, and even hybrid AI architectures. And so that was the thing that actually intrigued me the most when I dug beneath the buzzword salad, was this notion of we got to serve customers where they're at now, which is not it's not as simple as a fashionable cloud lake house or whatever.
So when you say that, you're saying it's a reality with the hybrid, or it's marketing, or both?
I think it's reality, actually. which
Okay.
is that's what really spoke to me when I saw that word, because I was like, yeah, that's the predicament that customers are in. They need data solutions across a variety of landscapes, not just, oh, let's get a cool cloud data lakehouse and say that we've solved our data problems.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's a big deal, I think. So, Shashi or Ken, what do you guys think?
I can just give you my kind of novice view of this. Is like Lenovo, having been in the space for some time, they have to invest in data storage because of AI coming up with a lot of requirements for data. So I'm sure this will be one of the few acquisitions that they'll make in the next months or years. Go
Okay.
ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I don't care whether you think about it as edge computing or local computing. Data is becoming absolutely critical. And I think people now that with the proliferation of AI, Gen AI, and agentic, people are recognizing that having data is really critical to be able to do anything that's really good. So part of, I think, the strategy that people need to be thinking about is, where is your data and how do you move it around? So having a hybrid store that you can count on, that's, well, maybe somewhere between local storage and somewhere sitting in the cloud, makes a whole lot of sense in order to start getting your hands around it. Now, that does present a similar or another issue with regards to, how do you manage that data? How do you scrub that data? And how do you get it into the places where it needs to be in order to be useful?
That's a good point. Sam, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is very interesting, and I don't know if anybody tracks numbers in the infrastructure market, and that has been sort of our weak area as part of this panel, I guess. We need a lot more infrastructure exposure. So here, in my mind, this is the storage story. That's how I would read it, right? And in the storage, and John's point is right, that hybrid is probably one of the factors that should jump out from this story. But not all hybrids are created equal. Okay, so when we talk about hybrid from the cloud perspective, we are talking about vendor lock. I don't know if this is the same hybrid here as well. And I don't know if this is more of the technology hybrid. There is a possibility. Again, I don't understand this market. I don't track. Second point, from the Lenovo perspective, they are more of the consumer player. I don't know how much penetration they have in the enterprise market. That's going to be my second point. And here, the story read that the Lenovo's existing position in the entry and mid-range enterprise storage market. So they are building. So meaning these guys are going to be in the mid-market as well. So I don't know how mid-market is different from enterprise, at least in the storage market. And then we are talking about AI here. So my assumption is going to be that anybody who's serving data center market is probably going to experience substantial growth. So acquisition sort of makes sense, but I don't know. I mean, those are my thoughts.
Is vendor lock-in, is that always a problem, or can that be beneficial to reduce your technology stack? We've talked about this a lot. I think we totally disagree, but I think vendor lock is not a horrible thing if I want to control things a little bit more. That I lose control at the same time, but I don't think it's always bad.
So here's what I would say. So when you talk about vendor lock-in, meaning you always want to have control on your own assets, regardless of how close friends you are, like US and Canada, you still want to have
You had to throw that in.
some control on your architecture, on your, I don't know, territory, I guess. So that's why the vendor lock-in matters, because if the vendors are going to have complete control, and generally with cloud, most cloud, the vendor control has been shifted substantially. And that's why vendor lock-in matters for cloud, because literally they are running your business. They can spike up at any point of time when their revenue is going to go down, and you have zero cloud because you cannot move in right away. So that's a headache for CFOs, to be completely honest.
So Robert, can I say one thing about that real quick?
Yeah, please.
I think lock-in isn't always bad in the sense that, like, so for example, like I got so sick of Microsoft's ridiculous strategy for its Windows environments that I ported over to Apple. So I have kind of a voluntary like commitment to that Apple platform. But like cell service is the same. Like I'm all Verizon, but I like knowing that it's portable. Like, and the more it's portable, then I know that I can move if situations change in the markets or companies acquire companies and suddenly a competitor of ours now owns my service provider, that's not good. So I need portability, and I think that's where vendors fall short. Is you make that long-term commitment, but you want to know that you can also do something else. I think that's where the problems come in.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Ken, I know you probably have something to say about this, so Shashi.
Yeah, so to extend on John's point here for a moment, I think that part of the thing about lock-in is show me a pricing model that will play long-term in practically any space right now. No, it's not happening. People are still figuring out what the charging basis should be, what's actually sustainable, compare that to what they need in order to be able to operate and provide these services. Is it actually sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the whole thing about this is if you sign a longer term agreement with someone and are effectively locked in, what if that pricing model changes? What are your options? You could find that what was originally actually quite affordable and beneficial for the organization is now unsustainable. I've seen too many examples of this where people bought in thinking, oh, this is the sticker price, only to find that the long-term cost of operation was unsustainable.
Right. That's a good point.
It could also be a protective play, right? Like if Lenovo doesn't offer this, then maybe the client is going to take Lenovo's business and go to somebody else who offers both. I think from talking to CIOs, they like asking an existing player for a new product first before they go out into the market. I don't know if that's the same experience all of you have.
Can I just make one quick comment? Leonard Gaff has a good one in the chat. So they are selling Lenovo flash drives. Well done, Leonard. And I also wanted to point out that there's another key phrase in this announcement, which is high-end enterprise storage solutions. That high-end part caught my eye. Like, what does that actually mean, right? So I had some ideas, but I decided to ask Google, and I got a nice AI overview of this. It's storage solutions designed for critical business workloads characterized by high performance, availability, and capacity, and beefed up with data security and integration and stuff like that, data center management. So what that tells me is Lenovo thinks there's an appetite for a premium data service offering, right? That because a lot of times with data services, you're forced to choose between different things. Like, okay, I want performance, but I got to settle on storage to make it all work. They're saying, no, you can. This is a premium offering where customers might want to check all those boxes.
Yep.
Sam, any closing thoughts before we go to the next one?
No, I think we are good. We might be able to cover the comments. I think that's what we had agreed to as a quorum.
We did.
So I'm actually going to bring some comments here. So we have one more from Leonard. So Leonard is saying perhaps there should be some probability vendors. It might be a good market space. I don't know where that comment is headed. Do you guys have any insights?
I know that there are a couple of vendors, especially when being able to pull from one system and then put it into another and manage all of the data migration tasks. That certainly is something that's commercially available today. But I'm not exactly sure if that covers what Leonard was pointing to.
Yeah, so I think I misspoke there. I think it's portability, not probability, I guess, right? So it's portability vendors, and I don't know if that is a thing.
It is.
Okay. Thanks for confirming that. More.
They may not actually describe themselves as a portability vendor, but there you go. That's
why we have air quotes there, I guess. More comments? No? Okay, I'll
There's
move to the next one.
more. Yeah, you get from Suda.
Okay, so she is saying for AI products, vendor lock-in means I don't know if that is a typo. You are locked in with an API that you will have to pay. That is right. For as the AI keeps learning with your data, so leaning and agnostic is better. Okay, Leningrad is probably the product name, and I think she has added somebody there. So, what do you guys think of this comment?
You know, it's interesting. This anybody who has access to your data is in some way or form going to use the data in some way. Sometimes it's for AI, sometimes it's for trend forecasting, right? And now I'm seeing more and more companies actually start saying like, hey, we have the data, why not go one step further? So she's probably right that if you're using vendor lock-in and if you're using their API, they're probably going to learn. Probably her suggestion maybe to try to be agnostic, vendor agnostic. So that's what I got from her. And by the way, hi Sudha, thank you for joining.
Indeed. Yeah, AI is interesting in that regard because a lot of companies right now are finding that different language models have different sets of pros and cons for different tasks. And so some companies and vendors really like interchangeability, but others are finding that really investing in one particular language model or language model platform allows them to accomplish a lot of fine tuning that they can't get otherwise. And so again, I think what you don't want is customers feeling trapped in. I think this was a really good point that that Kengon made around. You don't want to feel trapped in these longer term things. So my biggest advice around AI to customers is, you might pick one strategy or another, but this is way too early to get yourself into a multi-year commitment to a particular LLM vendor or a particular service provider. Like, give yourself more outs than you've ever had before on a frequent basis in case you change direction at this point.
Okay, great points. More comments? No? Okay.
The last comment I would have on this, and again, to extend the point a little bit, people, be very, very careful about looking through the data usage agreements that you sign when you get engaged with a vendor. You need to know. And you can't just do it, like the IT department. You need to engage legal. You need to get a cross-functional view of it so you're not getting set up for a failure.
Yeah, because one really quick example of that from an LLM perspective is that LLM vendors, even if they don't train on your data, they do keep log files, and those log files need some legal scrutiny as well. And if you don't know that, you sign an agreement, then you're like, what happened? You're keeping log files on all my queries?
Yeah, great points, guys. More comments? No? Okay. I'll keep going. So we have one more comment before we can start on the next story. So here Leonard is saying, in other words, they would back up your data in addition to your regular vendor. So if you need to move, you can. I think he's trying to describe the portability vendors. Interesting. But yeah, there are tons. Now I understand the context here. Thank you so much, guys. Okay. So if you don't.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay.
Yep. So this is about customer data platforms, and a company called Rack is acquiring mParticle. So I guess Rack is more of an e-commerce platform. Is that correct, guys? And they're buying the customer data platform mParticle. I believe that's the case. But what this is doing that I see is it's another way to get more of a personalized, unified view of your data. Because we're talking about data here. We're talking about how do we get this more personalized so it's used from an actionable standpoint, a real-time data standpoint, where it could get into accessing the data correctly to do formalized, plans from a campaign views and to really move Rack to a different level. But what do you guys all think about that? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why customer data platforms are they're climbing and being more of I guess in the news lately, and we're seeing like Adobe enhancing theirs from a marketing standpoint to use in marketing. We're seeing things that for example, what SAP just did with the release, and so there's a lot of things with Databricks and Snowflake, but this is on a different scale. But this is more geared towards customer satisfaction. But what do you guys all thoughts?
I'm excited with this. 20 years ago, or maybe 18 years ago, we were all thrilled with Amazon, right? Like, hey, Amazon knows as soon as I open the browser, it says, hi, Shashi, right? But what I'm seeing today is there are a lot of different vendors who are trying to provide personalization. Number one is if you're searching for a product, instead of going through a Google-like list, you're now able to actually say, I'm looking for shoes, and start getting almost like a e-commerce shopping cart created exclusively for you, providing the contextual intelligence that's there, right? I hadn't heard of Rock before, Sam. Thank you for putting this up. But it seems like this is a marriage of convenience in many ways. Both these companies have very good brands as customers. So it's almost saying like, hey, why not we join together? I think they will also play in the space with companies or products like Twilio Segment, maybe Klaviyo a little bit. So the e-commerce industry is going to see a little bit of benefit from this, is my opinion.
So one quick thing: what is the benefit of the e-commerce and the customer data platform putting that together for the customer?
Again, personalization, like you're able to figure out who this person is, location, some of the other data that comes with it, what did they purchase before. And imagine like somebody coming and telling you like, hey, it's been 2 years since you bought shoes. It's time to change, right?
So it's more of a cross-selling situation.
Plus, I think some of their customers,
supply and demand and forecasting sales and things of that nature, and what their next buy should be of that. Okay, Ken, what do you think?
I think that the whole issue around and nobody would argue with the idea that a CDP is necessary. As you start looking into the adjacent areas where you might actually use that customer data, that's where it starts to get interesting. But it reminds me of the AI ops market, where people were taking performance elements and using and spinning them together in a way which provided a view of an area, but wasn't necessarily consistent from vendor to vendor. So it places the burden on the customer to figure out, hey, does this actually work for what my needs are? So I think we've got a long way to go to have some sort of overriding view about what this means to the consumer that you're serving, and then being able to properly evaluate whether or not the expense of actually acquiring and using it is going to give you the right level of payback.
Very good point. John, what do you think?
So just one thing to add, everyone made good points here. I think the real-time phrase really caught my eye here, and that's obviously because e-commerce is very much a high-stakes real-time scenario, right? Like many of the purchasing decisions that you're targeting with consumers are happening very quickly, and you need that real-time information to guide them, to show them things that are relevant, all of that stuff. As such, it's a really interesting proving ground for a lot of AI scenarios, because it's a less high-stakes environment, if you will, to try to apply real-time data effectively than, say, for example, mission critical manufacturing and things like that. So I really enjoy watching this space for that reason, because the stakes are high for real time, but the consequences of getting it wrong are not necessarily as serious. Though obviously, if you get caught on the wrong end of a personalization experience or a bad ordering experience, you're not going to agree with me. But in general, that's not I don't think a crisis. And the final thing I would point out is, just if you're looking at these vendors closely, one thing that I thought was interesting from the article talked about the blurring of the lines a little bit. So there was David Chan, who was a CDP expert, said this is another example of the growing messy middle of MarTech, as Rock now overnight is no longer just an e-commerce solution, and mParticle is no longer just a CDP. And in many ways, that kind of blurring of the lines, I think, is a value add for customers to get a more complete solution, but it does change your evaluation for these vendors to keep that in mind.
Okay, guys, so I can start. So a couple of things, I guess. So number one, I think there is a correction here in this story. The source is not necessarily IBM. I think this story must be from CMS Critics, so I want to call that out before we get too further down. Now, a couple of things overall. There are 3 or 4 different components. And overall, when you look at the representation of CDP, where that sort of fits in the architecture, I'm going to be called out on this comment, okay? So heads up. So, so I like to see this as more of the baby sister of MDM world, the way MDM used to work. Obviously, MDM was very bloated. CDP is a cooler, newer thing, and marketers don't like to see themselves as more of the MDM. But the purpose is really MDM, provide the customer 360 from all perspectives. I think that's the point that Shashi was trying to make. Just one clarification: this is not the personalization category. So personalization category is slightly different. Okay, when you talk about the personalization category, that's going to be the whole A/B testing, multivariate testing, and there are different tools in the toolbox for that category. Okay, so now the problem that CDP is struggling at this point of time is, and I think we have one comment here: independent CDPs are the hot commodity. So overall, if you talk to anybody in the CDP community, including the name drop that John, you did for David Chen, and he is a very prominent voice in the CDP market. Okay, so if you look at CDP right now, CDP is a hot mess. Okay, everybody's sort of trying to figure out, okay, where that fits. And there was a name drop in between for Adobe, I guess, for Twilio segment, as well as for Klaviyo. So Klaviyo is trying to claim that CDP belongs to the whole marketing automation category. Okay, my CMS peers are trying to claim that it belongs to the CMS. Now, where does it belong? Nobody knows. Okay, so I think this is going to be a market which is going to see a lot of changes, but everybody is trying to get the piece of the pie, because this is all consolidation in my mind. That's what is happening, because all these widgets are great, but are they driving real revenue is the question. They are not. That's why consolidation.
That's a huge point right there. Are they driving revenue?
So we just can't cancel the rest of the articles and debate whether CDP is a category or not for the rest of the show. Because I think we could probably spend 30 minutes on that based on like Thomas's comment here around CDP is not the solution. Every biz solution that is worth a grain of salt has one embedded. I mean, we could riff on this for 30 minutes, I think.
Yeah, so I think we need to go for those comments, and those comments are really good. So we should do that, I guess. If you guys are okay, unless you have any other comments. Okay. Okay, so I'm actually going to switch to this view right now. So Ben has one comment. So let's go over all of them that we have not touched so far. So Ben is saying, heck yes, read those EUAs. How does Zoom go from a video company to remote AI agent company in a year? And think through what your vendors are doing with your data. And my understanding of EUA would be end user agreement, I guess, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Any comment on this? If not, we can move to the next. No? Okay.
No, I think Ken had a good point that you should watch all of these, right? Like as consumers, we hardly read any of that. But enterprises should definitely not only just have your legal team or your IT team review it, but preferably somebody who's an expert. Like I think Ben is pointing out to probably an EOA in Zoom, which I hadn't noticed at all, is now a remote AI agent company.
I really want to say something snarky about that, but I'm going to hold off.
Okay, so if you guys don't have anything else, I'll move to the next one. So now everyone wants to be an AI business, and everyone wants to be a CDP business as well, I guess. Maybe CDP AI, you never know.
Like there was a time when everybody wanted to be a .com business.
Exactly. So now this is a very interesting comment. Okay, I really want to touch on this before we move to
Hi, Tony.
Thomas's comment.
Hey, Tony, how's it going?
Hey, Tony. So here he's talking about B2B CDP market. Do you know or prefer some account-based CDPs? And now I don't know if there is a segmentation between the CDP solutions that we have in the market versus B2C. In my mind, always, CDP was more of the, I don't want to call e-commerce, but very consumerized play. That's how I always thought of CDP. In fact, I always thought that the commerce or the retail segment never sort of had a real CRM. That's why they needed CDP. So in my mind, always CDP was the CRM of the retail e-commerce centric businesses. That's how I always thought. Now, this is a very interesting comment because B2B is very different, because this is where ERP becomes very real. So a lot of things that you are handling in your POS, in your CRM, they generally reside inside slightly richer component that is going to have thicker layers, and that becomes sort of the source of truth from the customer's standpoint. And the whole idea of CDP is to provide that, source of truth kind of master data governance. I don't want to call that because that could mean a lot. So here, I don't know if there is something called P2P CDP market and account-based CDP. I can see some value there, but I don't know how real that is. Comments?
Shashi, what do you think? You're an expert on this.
Yeah, but you're right. There isn't. I don't think there's a segregation of CDPs between B2B and B2C, but I think it's most of the products here, like if you take Klaviyo segment, they could be applicable to both, right? And there are also, like earlier, we used to think about all these data brokers like Axiom and other companies, right? But now this is a little bit more advanced. I think, I don't know if there are very specific B2B CDP markets, if that makes sense. Almost everybody is going to have a CDP solution in some way or form, just like Thomas said.
So, Shashi, just one clarification. So this is coming from Klaviyo's financial statements, I guess, and they are very deliberate about being just in the e-commerce market. In fact, they are very tightly correlated with Shopify. So I don't know if they really target the B2B, to be completely honest. They are very, very, very deliberate, and that's what they are saying, that other marketing automation vendors, they are targeting both. They are kind of confused, but Klaviyo is very, very, very deliberate that they only want to target that segment. More comments?
Commerce, so you're right.
I think he's
I do think there's
the
just
investor thing of Twilio. Go ahead.
Oh, just real quick, I think you could have a longer discussion. I think we should move on, but I think there's some interesting distinctions here between like in the consumer-based CDP thing. I think a lot about that real-time impact of hitting a customer in the moment of purchase. In a B2B market, a lot of times that moment of purchase isn't as important because purchasing is often a much more extended cycle. So in a B2B context, where I think this gets interesting is around giving me a much more holistic view, which I think is what Tony's referring to in the account-based scenario, to just really apply my data resources to much better understanding of that client, so that when they call me and want to talk about stuff, I really have all the data at my fingertips from a variety of channels. So in a B2B, there's so many silos there. And so if vendors can help break that down, I think that's great, but I'm not sure I would call it a CDP or not. I'm not sure that category is very important for that.
Does this add something about data quality, of how important it is from all your perspective? Because I think that it kind of keeps on going back to that. If we don't have data quality, what is this about then? And do you think companies are ready for this, or is there data at that level? I don't know. Sam, what do you think?
So data quality is a much broader conversation, I guess. I don't know if a system can solve that, to be completely honest. Okay, so when you are looking at collection of systems, it's almost like you need to create your own traffic rules.
Good point.
Just because you are putting a signpost does not mean that people are going to follow that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the strategy. That's your change management. That's about, don't you need to get your data at a certain level for all these tools that we're talking about, or else you're just point where you're just getting technology and it's not being used. It's like getting a new car and not driving it. You have to be able to have your data set up for all these great innovations. And, once we start talking even about the next slide and about AI and developing, different ways to take advantage of that, how far away are you from that if your data is not good? So I think it's a constant discussion.
Okay, so we can keep moving on more comments. We have a lot today. So Ben is saying, for small to medium-sized businesses that are overwhelmed with the RevOps ecosystem will get benefit from vertical integration rather than having a Shopify plus CDP plus CRM consolidation. If it brings simplification, could add value. So I think, I'll start off. And I guess the consolidation and the best of breed, they are almost like the cycles of recession, the way they work. Okay, so most companies start with some sort of feature, then they get consolidated, then everybody start hitting them, every single category out there, and then somebody comes and they create a new solution. At least that's what they call them, but that new solution is nothing that already resides inside that rabbit hole of consolidation that we have already done. So I guess, there is always going to be a preference, especially in the marketing, MarTech, RevOps world. This is slightly different because you can live with these best of breed solution. And that's why, platforms like Shopify, they are so powerful because they are enabling the ecosystem. The reason why Salesforce is so powerful is because they are fostering that ecosystem right now, to be completely honest. So I don't know if you guys are going to have any comments on that. No?
We covered it.
Okay. Thomas is saying a CDP is not the solution. Every best solution that is worth a grain of salt has one embedded. What do you guys think? Everybody's agreeing?
Yeah.
Okay, thumbs up. Okay. Okay, so Ben is saying, but if you push CDP into an e-com or CMS platform, you can get the personalization. That is right. But again, the integration, I don't know how critical that is. I mean, the data model is not as embedded. And that's why I guess the best of breed approach works for the majority of the e-com vendors. And that's why you could actually have the composable. And John, I think we have had this debate before. The composable makes sense for the e-commerce, RevOps-centric players, as long as you don't need that data integrity, data tightness, it works. So I don't know why you cannot get personalization even if you are going to use a best of breed platform that is going to be tightly integrated. Comments? No? Okay. Tony is saying, I only know CDPs that are concentrating on individual people. That's right. No comments?
Oh, questions today. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
One more comment from Thomas. He's saying in B2B CDP vendors have the same challenge as marketing companies. There are only a few that can support the different needed data model. That's right. They vary per industry. Each industry has very different needs. Great point.
Yep.
No disagreements. Okay. One more. Wow. CDP is hot. We need to create a CDP show, I guess. A CDP needs to be part of what I would call a data platform. SAP and Salesforce have started to talk about that, if not deliver, at least a part of it. So I think that's not necessarily accurate. I guess I'm going to disagree there. So when you talk about the real data platform, especially when you are talking about business data cloud, that has a very different need overall. The CDP is not necessarily replacement for business data cloud. Business data cloud is not necessarily going to do this work. Yes, you are going to have a lot more data from the enterprise perspective, but the intent of CDP is slightly lighter. It's very different from the MarTech perspective. In fact, you might not have all of those data sets there. So again, I guess it would depend upon the architecture, but I don't know if that is really a replacement. No comments there?
Well,
Okay.
let me offer one here.
Yeah.
So I don't think it necessarily has to be fully organized around architecture. So let's think about this from terms of like capabilities. So if you have an e-commerce platform, you have a customer data platform, you have a telecom platform, there are, as I think Thomas was saying, there are a certain set of capabilities which are common amongst all these, which actually creates a bit of noise, right? And these adjacencies provide the vendors with an opportunity to say, how can I expand out my footprint, grab more customers, become more valuable, charge, generate more revenue? This is where the rub is, because as you start to expand and look at these set of capabilities, you begin to lose definition over, well, what does it mean to be able to play in a certain market? And this is why I was saying earlier about the AI apps thing. It makes it more confusing for customers because now they have to go through and figure out what are the right sets of capabilities that they need in order to be able to empower their employees to go out and do the business, do the work that they need to do. I don't envy anyone who's out there trying to figure out which products they should buy, because the mix of capabilities is,
Which way do you go to? Do you look at connecting your CDP or a CDP that's associated with the ERP, or the other end, like we're talking about here, from an architectural standpoint? Like,
where are you locked in?
Well,
How,
we can
how
go back
much
to
money
that
have you spent on a honking platform, which now gives you the opportunity to extend and get other capabilities? And I think that this is the thing that makes it really tough for customers to walk through and come up with some decision logic that rationalizes, well, if I do this, am I going to have duplicate capabilities, which I'm now paying for, which is
Right.
essentially waste?
Right. Well, they need a technology stack that's to give them the best business outcomes. So whatever that is, do they need to go so granular and have so many different technologies, or do they just need to be able to like be more efficient, productive, and grow? So does all this? Do they need all of this? I think they do, but they need. Is it better to look at it from the ERP perspective and grow from there, or from the CRM perspective in e-commerce?
Very individual decision based on customer footprint and investment and IT strategy and everything else. But I get frustrated a lot by some of these news stories in a sense because so much of it is about tools and technology, whereas I really want businesses to start less on tech and more on who are our key stakeholder groups, how are we underserving them, what are the opportunities to serve them better, and in that context, you need experts in the room who can walk you through, here's what a CDP can do, here's what AI can do, here's where you're falling short on some basic automations that would help you before you invest in all this super expensive bullshit. And one of the big things too is you need a gradual approach too, because that's the final question is how are we going to stack up quick wins? Because this data conversation is really healthy, but it's going to take years to fix all this crap in a large company. And maybe you never will. So where is your data quality the best? And how can you get started and notch a win so that when you come in a few months and have to say what's up with our AI strategy, you actually can show them something that actually works?
Don't you think the innovation aptitude of a company is a big deal? Like, they're not all created equal, like you just said. Like, but maybe
that's part innovation, risk profile, industry compliance restrictions. All of that factors in too.
But some of these companies are like so far behind. Some of them are so far advanced, but the ones that are behind, they don't care about all this jargon and investing in this way. They just want to figure out what tools can help them be better and more efficient, and it's a competitive advantage. So does this all matter to them? It does, but which is best? Like you said, it has to be put together the right way.
I know we're going further, but just to comment on what John said, and I agree with him, is CDP buyers within a large organizations are actually not talking to the other people and saying, do we already have a tool that can do this, right? Or they're not talking to the AI ops or data science team and say, this is exactly what we want. We want to personalize some experience for our customers on X, Y, Z channel. So they've heard that other companies are using CDP, so they go look for a CDP vendor, try to integrate it, and then 2 years later they're saying like, hey, this didn't work out for us. But the other thing that I predict is like there will be, I think probably Thomas is alluding to that, there will be other companies, and even Sam said this, the MDM providers will actually say like, hey, we can do CDP too. Or so I've also seen some of these iPaaS providers who are integrating data can also say like, hey, we can give the user the data you want as quickly as possible. I think the key here is real time. That will take some time for everybody to try to get that capability.
Yeah, so we are going to skip on some of the comments, I guess, but I want to address this one. We have John's friend, I guess, in the room, and he wants you to say something, I guess.
Oh yeah, he's trying to trick me on real-time AI powered data transformation at scale because he knows that I wake up every morning dreaming about that. Thanks, Alan. Glad to have you in the chat. We'll get back to AI in our next news announcement if you can wait a few minutes.
All right, so we'll skip that and we'll probably cover some more stories if you guys are ready for that. CDP was hot. Oh my god.
It's hot.
Now let's get to a topic that's not hot at all.
Hey, Sam, why don't you introduce this one? I got somebody at my door. I'll be right back.
Of course. So here, this is the ServiceNow acquisition. Hyoun is the company. And this is very similar acquisition as what we have seen from HubSpot. Everybody is moving towards conversations, including Salesforce, ServiceNow, HubSpot. So the application interaction in my mind is going to be very conversation centric. So this is a very interesting acquisition. At least I'm excited about it. I don't know what you guys feel.
I am. So the thing I'd like to call out here is ServiceNow has a good track record of looking at its acquisitions. And what I mean by that is they do a lot of work to examine the capabilities that the target would provide, and then taking the time to actually fold that into the actual platform itself. So that even though you could look at this and say, well, this is a customer satisfaction play, the fact of the matter is I would expect that what's going to come from this is they're developing a capability which will now have API level access and be useful across all of the different applications that ServiceNow makes available to its customers. And with that, you can expect that it's going to change the pricing and consumption model and probably end up costing end users a little bit more. Now, I don't know that for a fact, because it's going to take some time for that to play out. But certainly, I think ServiceNow customers are used to paying a premium for capabilities.
Yeah.
It's also a way again to not to let another vendor come in, because a lot of companies like Hyoun that have this capability. So a ServiceNow customer has to go to another vendor and say, like, I need to plug in another solution for all the unstructured chats, phone calls, and everything, and find customer sentiment in that. I think ServiceNow's play in actually providing that to the customers, again, is for most of their customers, it's a checkbox. Does the user want this? Obviously, the answer will be yes, right? So expanding existing customers with a higher ticket value, I think it's a good strategy. And Hyoun seems to have a good reputation too.
So if you look at all of this, I mean, Sam, you could have picked 100 AI news announcements, and we wouldn't have had all of them from this week, right? And if you look at them, companies are trying to earn these AI workloads, and why they're trying to do that, of course, is that becoming a trusted vendor for AI services is a big deal, because AI has a much higher bar for achieving trust with the provider than most other technologies we've ever dealt with. And so that's why you see this frenzy, is the more you can get these workloads, the more you can have a chance to be the one to build that trust, and the more your customer will come back to you and say, can you help us with this AI problem? Can you help us with that one? One thing that I think is interesting here is Ken rightly talked earlier about how the quality of the data is a really important factor. And you see that in the ServiceNow press release, where they talk a lot about fragmentation and silos and all the things that get in the way of getting that good real-time view that you often need, especially in a chat scenario. But the one thing that drives me a little crazy, and I'm actually going to publish on this today, is that even if you have all the right data, I'm sorry, it's still a probabilistic technology. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to fall short sometimes, and it's going to have problems, and those problems need to be carefully scrutinized from a reliability perspective and everything else. But what I like about this announcement is it talks about the dynamic ability to measure these conversations between human and AI agents. So in other words, instead of looking back later and saying what went wrong in this interaction, the idea here that I think is spot on is let's try to get this issue dealt with in the moment while the customer's still interacting and still on the hook and still engaging. And I think that's huge, because none of these systems are perfect. And so if you can get that happening, correcting in real time, hey, this agent didn't understand me, you want to address that in that moment, not later when you send out an annoying survey and get zeros all the way across for screwing up the transaction.
I think this is the next level, or another level, for ServiceNow, their commitment to their AI strategy. So I think it's on par. It's probably, is expected. I also like what ServiceNow, just kind of getting away from this just the tad, is their commitment to industry specific. They're doing a lot of things. And what do you all think this will play from that perspective, if anything?
Well, as I was saying before, I think that by working this at the API level, it doesn't matter which of the products that they're bringing to market, like the HR product or the IT specific focus, or maybe even stuff that works with, like financial close. You're going to be able to start to take advantage of these capabilities in each one of the product sets without having to worry about having to custom or hand roll an integration to get the value from it.
I hope it's that easy. What do you think,
Okay.
Sam?
Yeah, so I think we have one comment. We can cover that. I think that's related to this story. So Leonard is saying, I see a lot of companies making the claim, oh, we have AI now because their competitors have done the same, but really interesting functional AI and getting it to work with data and collecting the right data is the real challenge. That is usefulness, not bragging rights. So I'll just make one comment here, and I don't know whether anybody was logged into the Salesforce developer conference yesterday. Whatever they are working on, it might answer a lot of questions that people have. It's pretty cool. Even though obviously they have been very aggressive in media with their AI claims, but what they have done is mind blowing, I would say. So I don't know if anybody else has done similar. There are demos, etc., but nobody has shown the real demo of the code and how they are going to create the agents and how they are going to spin off. It's commendable. Okay. Any other comments, guys, on this story, or can we cover one more? We have 6 minutes right now.
There's just one comment on this. Like sometimes when we are talking about AI agents, like one of the things that the finance industry has done, and they've been doing it for far more time than most of the other industries using AI, is being able to predict what next this customer might want. That's an excellent use case because, for example, looking at the data, if I call a bank, probably they're going to say, like, this person has a good credit score, they've been with the bank, why don't you offer them an upgrade for a card? I mean, that would be a real use. I don't know if it fits into this particular use case, but that kind of real-time prediction will be useful. It's not necessarily just talking to an AI agent, but being able to earn more revenue and better customer experience using that. So I think it's a good acquisition.
Great.
Okay, so next story then, or more comments? Next story. Okay, we can probably do one more, and then we just have 5 minutes right now. So Robert, your call, whether you want to cover or.
Yeah, let's go through this real quick. Unless you guys don't want to, we can end on this. But this kind of goes with John. Is this a rant or a rave from you about the cloud and about the development of how this company Render got $80 million, to really develop their cloud a little bit further, their platform, and it's something that you probably are very familiar with. But what's your thoughts on the ability to create applications without having complex infrastructure?
Hey, who's going to argue with making app development simpler, right? That seems like a winner. Obviously got $80 million in funding, so you better make it simpler because you got to get that money back. But look, I mean, there's a couple things going on here at the same time, because at the same time that it's important to understand cloud technology stacks, there's also a parallel trend of make it really easy for people to build stuff without having to have all of that depth of expertise in hyperscaler management, right? So it's sort of a combination where it's good to have those competencies, but you don't want to rely on them all the time. So in theory, I really like these concepts because anytime you can free up either developers or business users to, if you don't mind me using the bold term, create, that's a good thing, because that's where value differentiation happens, is when you build something that matters to someone. So it's really nice when you're not distracted by managing your 100-page terms of service agreement and trying to figure out how to apply your own patches and stuff. So I think it's good, but all of this has to be proven out, right? Like, the intent sounds lovely. Let's see the result.
That's a good point. Sam, anything from your end? I guess.
I'm not sure about the story, to be completely honest, and why anybody would invest in this company, to be completely honest. Because right now, if you talk about what they are bringing to the table is kind of user experience from the app deployment perspective. But there are like million apps out there. So, everybody was saying nobody is going to invest in SaaS. So how come this is receiving the investment? But at the same time, AI agent development is going to be hot. So maybe that's what is driving, but it's a very confusing story in my mind. I really don't know what's going on.
So Sam, what's interesting too is, like, they list AWS, they say this is going to be a lot easier than AWS, Google, Azure, Heroku. Well, they have to prove that, right? Because all those companies, you think they're sitting around saying, oh, let's make this like really hard. They're all trying to make it easier.
Yep.
Yeah, this reminds me of 2006 when AWS first started. Probably the story was exactly the same. And, hey, more power to them if they want to go against the big guys because it's not a crowded market anymore. I think they probably have a play if they're as simple as they say they are.
Good point. Well, let's wrap up, Sam. This is, I think we're just about a couple minutes left. What do you think? Any further comments, or should we go around with closing comments? Start with Ken. Any enlightening thoughts or big plans for the weekend? How about those?
Well, I think that I want to double down on the comment that I made earlier about going through the legal documentation. So whether it's your terms and conditions, data usage addendums, or other things related to privacy policies, you really need to take these threats seriously because they do represent threats and potential areas of exposure that could totally torpedo a company.
Shashi?
You don't need more tools. You just need a good idea of what your customer experience should look like, and then go and look for the tool.
Okay. John?
Well, I learned a lot, and I'm not as grouchy. And I think it's because I think it's because like the press releases often represent one point of view, but hashing this out brings in the full spectrum. And that's exactly how customers should approach these issues. So if you can simulate this kind of dialogue as you're evaluating technology, I like your chances.
I'll talk just a little bit about ROI with AI. I'm a little worried about how we're going to get that, and AI pricing, how that model is built into some of these tools, because I think some of the companies are talking about it, but I'm a little worried that we don't know what we don't know. And then are we actually able to have benefits? Because is our data good enough to get to the benefits? Does the pricing allow us to actually have an ROI? But this weekend, I don't know. I got some family coming in town. I'm going to hang out and maybe have some play some pickleball and see if the sun comes out. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, so closing comments from my side, and Shashi is going to like this, okay? So I think we have a real messaging problem with this show because we have a C missing, because last time we did concrete show, today's show was CDE. So we are sort of doubling, tripling down on the letter C. So we need to incorporate C as part of the show. So that's my closing comment with C. On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for dialing in. I'll see you next week. We are going to come back 11 o'clock Thursday next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.